think Biden's failures need to end up being the swan song for what the late Angelo Codevilla called the ruling class in this country. He saw this probably before anybody, but he was right on the money. This ruling class is a toxic combination of managerial incompetence and cultural radicalism. They have led this country through a generation of policy failures, and that's probably partially because of their ideology. They consider themselves globalists and citizens of the world. They reject national sovereignty and the importance of having borders. That's why what you're seeing at the southern border is really not incompetence on Biden's part. It's intentional on Biden's part, because the ruling class fundamentally doesn't believe that we have a right to control our own territorial sovereignty. If you look at the foreign policy blunders that we've seen in the last generation, we emerged from the Cold War the strongest country in the history of the world. On September 11th, no one had ever been anywhere close to what America was. But if you look since then, if you look at the quagmire that was Iraq, which was a war that I served in, if you look at escapades like Libya, if you look, of course, at the disastrous culmination of the Afghanistan conflict, our country, because of the failure of these ruling elites, we stand here poorer, weaker, and more humiliated than at any time in my lifetime. We look to be rivaled by China in ways that we would not have even imagined 30 or 40 years ago. This ruling class has done more to elevate China than any other group of Americans. They were the ones pushing for China to be in the WTO, to grant them most favored nation status. They were instrumental in eroding our own industrial base here in the United States, and that has caused our supply chains to be vulnerable to the whims of the Communist Party of China. And I can tell you, Beijing was watching what Biden did in Afghanistan, and you have not heard the last from that regime. They have Biden's number, and it's going to be a rocky 3.5 years from here on out. This ruling class, though, once you're in the club, you can fail upward. There's no accountability for these failures. I mean, just think about Afghanistan. Has a single person lost their job over the Afghanistan debacle? No. You look at malfeasance within the bureaucracy. It was actually surprising, because I was in Congress doing some of the misdeeds of the FBI. They actually, for a minute, held McCabe accountable. He was disciplined and lost his pension and all this stuff. Well, guess what? He was doing the bidding of the ruling regime, and so now you got Biden in there, and they've now restored all his pension and benefits. And so he's not held accountable. That's what they do. They take care of their own. Just look at what they do in terms of Anthony Fauci. He lied to Congress. He funded the Wuhan lab, and he funded gain-of-function research. And we all know that. But yet when he's on CNN or NBC, do they ask him about that? Do they hold his feet to the fire for his bungled predictions day after day? No, because he serves the interests of the ruling class. He's part of the club. And he's not going to be held accountable. I mean, heck, the 15 days to slow the spread was his idea. And that was a catastrophe. And just think about how ridiculous some of the COVID regulations were that were imposed by our elites. In April of 2020, they said, you can't leave your house. I used to get heat because I thought people should be able to go to the beach. We had beaches open. I told people to go for walks. I said, don't stay in your house. People would say,